This is a story about Glastonbury magic. Holy earth, a saintly wizard with a staff, and a tree too unusual to be ignored. The Glastonbury thorn, which flowers not only in springtime, but also in midwinter, and very often on Christmas Day. It's a plant that is much more than a plant. It's a plant that is also a symbol. It's a bit of a shapeshifter, and it has meant a lot of different things to different people over the years, but most of the time it's meant hope. And in this difficult year, when there's fear in the air and a babel of contradictory voices clamouring for attention, all claiming to know the truth, the one truth worth remembering is that hope is good for you. The tale of the thorn bridges the gap between the legend-making monks of Glastonbury Abbey and the town of legend that Glastonbury is today, and the written story starts exactly 500 years ago. In the year of our Lord 1520, Henry VIII had been on the throne for 11 years, and was already getting worried at his wife Queen Catherine's inability to provide him with an heir. He was vain and arrogant, but not yet the tyrannical despot he was to become. He was determined to make his country count for something in Europe, and this picture depicts the Field of the Cloth of Gold, a magnificent bling fest that Henry held to impress King Francois of France that year. In that year too, Glastonbury Abbey published a pamphlet called The Life of Joseph of Arimathea, about the Abbey's legendary founder. According to the story, Joseph of Arimathea went to Glastonbury and settled there. This not only made Glastonbury the cradle of British Christianity, but Britain more special than the rest of Europe, since no other country claimed to have been converted so soon after the crucifixion. The pamphlet told the story of Joseph's journey to Britain, and of a series of miraculous cures which he claimed to have been brought about by Joseph's intervention. But the writer's main purpose was to stress Glastonbury's place magic. Glastonbury is the holiest earth of England, he proclaimed, and as evidence he told us about two special trees, a walnut in the abbey grounds that always flowered at midsummer, and the thorn on Wirral Hill, which blossomed and bore green leaves at Christmas, when the great cold cometh to ground. Now the abbot of Glastonbury, Richard Beer, was a staunch supporter of the Tudor dynasty, and the writer made a point of stressing Glastonbury's importance to what he described as Great Britain Fortunate. The pamphlet was printed by the King's printer, Richard Pinson, and the intention, I think, was to win the approval and the attention of an ambitious monarch. So was Henry impressed? Did he even get to hear about it? It's hard to say, but even if he was impressed, it certainly didn't help the Abbey in the long term. Enraged by the Pope's refusal to let him divorce his wife and marry Anne Boleyn, the king renounced the religion of the rest of Europe, dissolved the monasteries and sold off their lands. And Glastonbury was singled out for special attention. On the 15th of November 1539, Abbot Richard Whiting was hanged upon the Tor with two of his monks beside him, like the two thieves that were crucified with Christ. This deliberate blasphemy could have been designed to destroy any notion of Glastonbury being the holiest earth of England. But when they pulled the abbey walls down, they forgot about the thorn on Wirral Hill. The little tree kept the magic alive during the dark centuries that followed. It was Glastonbury's own miracle, which continued to defy the norms of nature, and so seemed to prove that there really was something special about the holiest earth of Glastonbury. At a time when iconoclasts were destroying religious symbols everywhere, this wasn't good news, however. And at some point in the 1640s, the Glastonbury thorn was chopped down by a zealot. This wasn't the end of the tree, of course. There were plenty of offcuts and grafts elsewhere, but there was no thorn on the hill for well over 200 years. It became a very present absence, as can be seen from this engraving by Wenceslas Holler, produced for Sir William Dugdale's very provocative Monasticum Anglicanum, a plush lament for the destroyed abbeys of Britain. The Monasticum was published in 1655, by which date the thorn itself had long gone, but there it is, marked on the hillside, marked Sacra Spina for Holy Thorn. There was another illustration of Glastonbury in the same book, this one paid for by Elias Ashmole, founder of the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford, and one of the foremost alchemists of his day. Ashmole suspected that the thorn had been created by the alchemy of the abbots, using the elusive elixir, a substance which could change base metal into gold or even confer immortality. Ashmole believed that Dr. Dee had found large quantities of elixir in the ruins of Glastonbury Abbey, the holiest earth of England. So this picture is more than just a fine engraving. It is a depiction of somewhere frankly magical, the landscape of the elixir. It was very soon afterwards, with the thorn on the hill no more than a memory, that we get the first mention of Joseph of Arimathea arriving with his flowering staff. According to this story, Joseph and his followers arrived on Wirial Hill on Christmas Day. "We are Wirial," he said, giving the hill its name, and he planted his walking stick into the ground, whereupon it burst into flower. Now, flowering staffs were fairly common attributes of medieval saints and patriarchs, but it is surprising to see such a Catholic motif cropping up so late, deep in Protestant Somerset. Joseph has been reborn as a kind of saintly Gandalf, with a truly magical wand, with a mission perhaps to heal a divided country. Did it work? Some Catholics in Charles II's reign certainly had hopes that Joseph's miracle might persuade Protestants to convert back to their faith. These two magnificent items are not candlesticks, but reliquaries from the chapel of the Confraternity of the Rosary in Lincoln's Inn Fields. The one on the left contains a thorn from the crown of thorns, and the other a piece of the true cross, and the confraternity believed that both had belonged to Joseph of Arimathea. And there was never much chance of the Catholics winning round the Protestants, though. Anti-Catholic riots meant that the treasures such as these were hidden away in cupboards for centuries, while increasing scepticism about miracles of any kind meant that the story of Joseph was doomed to the dustbin of polite society. But the thorn itself refused to go away. It continued to flower at Christmas. The educated classes came to see it as a botanical curiosity, and nurseries made good money grafting cuttings for the gardens of the posh. To the less well-heeled, however, the miraculous thorn retains something of its magic. It was a relic of the good old days when things were done right, and when things were what they used to be. And when in 1751, the government decreed that 11 days were to be lopped from the calendar, a lot of people felt that the high and mighty folks in power were seriously tempting fate. They turned to the Christmas flowering thorn for a sign. Would it obey the government, or continue to flower on Old Christmas Day? People began flocking in their thousands to scions of the thorn all around the country to find out whether the Almighty approved of the change. So, which day did it flower on? Oddly, it's hard to get a straight answer on that one. Some said one thing and some said another. Fake news abounded. The furore subsided and the world continued much as it had done before, but many people still continued to gather around the thorny offcuts on Old Christmas Eve to watch the thorn come into bloom, no doubt muttering darkly. In 1782, for instance, the Morning Chronicle, a London newspaper, announced that the thorn in St John's Churchyard at Glastonbury had blossomed on Christmas Day and was visited by a great number of the most ignorant and superstition of the common people, according to custom. It wasn't until the reign of Queen Victoria that the Glastonbury thorn crept back into respectability with people who weren't ignorant, superstitious or common. By then, Christmas itself had faded into the background as an unseemly and unnecessary relic of more ignorant times, but the new Queen and her German husband Albert were in the forefront of its reinvention as a cosy family affair, as this illustration shows. The Christmas fir tree was a German novelty, but interest in England's own Christmas tree revived as well, and the thorn came to represent the spirit of seasonal charity and goodwill. The Christmas editorial in the Preston Guardian summed it all up very well. Of all pretty Christmas legends, that of the Glastonbury thorn is one of the most suggestive. It points to the idea that the barren thorn bush of humanity has flowered at last. The beauty of the legend lies in the thought that yearly the prodigy is renewed. Once a year, kindness and love, the charities of the season as well as the compliments of it, break out in the most unexpected quarters. The rest of the year was another matter. Now, the Victorians were also becoming aware that Christianity wasn't the first religion on the island. What connection could there be between this feel-good shrub and the pagan rites of long ago? Was it possible that the thorn had been worshipped by pagans too? Some Christians certainly thought that it might have been. At the very end of Victoria's reign, Bishop Brown told a massive gathering at Anglicans in Glastonbury of his own instinctive belief that even before the Christian time, there was at Avalon a sacred tree. This tree, he later declared, was a Glastonbury thorn, which was the sacred tree of this land in pre-Christian ages. This Pictish carved stone is located 500 miles away from Glastonbury in Scotland, but Brown believed it represented a successful raid of Picts on horseback into the country of the sacred tree for the purpose of carrying off a bough. And Lionel Smithett-Lewis, the vicar of Glastonbury, not only claimed that the people of Glastonbury in days of yore had sent a cutting to the Queen at Christmas, but actually began to do the same thing himself. This first such sprig was sent to Queen Mary in 1929, and over the years the ceremony has grown to become quite an important event. These days the sprig is cut by the oldest child at St John's Infant School, watched by all the town dignitaries and a large number of others, while the children sing a special song. This picture was taken in 2018. This year, of course, the celebration has had to be much more low-key, but it's going ahead anyway, and rightly so, since the thorn is all about togetherness and hope in hard times. After the carnage of the First World War, sprays of the thorn were left alongside the wreaths on Armistice Day, and as a symbol of peace and remembrance, a thorn was planted in the churchyard of St George's Memorial Church at Ypres. Glastonbury's First World War veterans played a prominent part in the celebrations surrounding the planting of the new thorn on Wiriel Hill in 1951. This is the tree that most of us today think of first when we think of the Glastonbury thorn, a tough shrub on a hillside, and around the millennium it became a magnet for tree lovers, pagans and tourists of all kinds. Brightly coloured ribbons known as clooties were regularly tied to its railings, so that the tree in all seasons had the appearance of a much-loved maypole. Then in 2010 some villain chopped it down. No one has confessed to it, and I'm not going to speculate now. Suffice it to say that this second desecration brought the thorn even more attention than it had had before. Many feel that it's there in spirit still, and people come from all over the world to gather around the stump that's left, to meditate and to send out healing to the world. As it says in the book of Revelation, the leaves of the trees are for the healing of the nations. The holiest earth is now a planet. A tumultuous decade later, with fear abroad in the world and hope once more at a premium, what is the lesson of the absent thorn? Perhaps it is that hope springs eternal. The thorn on the hillside may be gone, but there are 1,000 other cuttings flourishing elsewhere. You can't keep a good thorn down. The human spirit will not be crushed. Hope lives on because hope is good for you.